sailor who spent 28 years on a deserted island, is one of the most enduring of all storybook heroes. But Crusoe's exciting adventures are not the figment of author Daniel Defoe's imagination. They were inspired by a real man, and his extraordinary story began here in the village of Largo, Scotland, the first stop on our journey into the world of the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. Visit the spectacular castles conceived by the Mad King of Bavaria. Explore the quietly violent world of spiders. Watch a bizarre courtship ritual in Central Asia. See the dried blood of a martyred saint miraculously liquefied. Be a witness at some of the world's most unusual weddings. These are the kinds of subjects that a man named Robert L. Ripley challenged us to
believe it or not.
For over 250 years, readers have been moved by the lonely exploits of Robinson Crusoe. In the movie version of the classic story, the marooned sailor who survived against all odds is played by Dan O'Herlihy. This is a statue of the real Robinson Crusoe. His name was Alexander Selkirk, and he was raised here in Largo, Scotland in the late 1600s. By the time he reached his teens, the young Selkirk had gained a reputation as a two-fisted troublemaker whose wild behavior scandalized the conservative village. In 1702, after a particularly nasty brawl, he angrily left Largo and set out for London. From there, he shipped out for the South Seas aboard a British vessel licensed to plunder Spanish possessions in the New World, just the kind of ship that suited Selkirk's fiery temperament. Once at sea, he was soon at odds with the captain. By the time the ship stopped at the uninhabited island of Juan Fernandez, 400 miles west of Chile, the captain had had enough of his quarrelsome seamen. He put Selkirk and his sea chest ashore. Stranded on a deserted island, Selkirk, like Robinson Crusoe, had no way of knowing how many years would go by until he saw another human being. Determined to survive, the strong-willed seaman quickly threw himself into the task of securing food and shelter. Like Crusoe, he built a hut with barricades. To help get him through his lonely ordeal, Selkirk, like Crusoe, sought comfort in the Bible he had kept in his sea chest. He would frequently read aloud from its dog-eared pages, especially at nightfall when, with all hope for rescue fading, he was vulnerable to despair. The fictional Robinson Crusoe eventually found human companionship in the character of Friday, but Alexander Selkirk remained alone. He would endure this isolation for 4.5 years, until finally he was rescued by a passing British warship. Selkirk spent 3 more years before the mast, raiding Spanish settlements in South America. Then, finally he came home where reports of his survival had preceded him. Gone for 8 years, he had left England an unknown sailor. Now, he returned a celebrity. He quickly became the darling of artists and journalists. Daniel Defoe, a writer of political tracts, met him and afterwards would publish his first and most famous novel, Robinson Crusoe. Despite Selkirk's growing fame, he became moody and withdrawn. Then, abruptly, one morning he left Largo for London. Records indicate he joined the Royal Navy, contracted a fever off the coast of Africa, and in December 1723, at the age of 47, he died. Ironically, Selkirk never knew that just a year earlier, he had been immortalized in a novel that had created a sensation in London, Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. The real Robinson Crusoe, Alexander Selkirk, died far from his home. All that he had held dear, he left behind in this village. A battered sea chest, a drinking cup carved from a coconut, and for all of us, the inspiration for one of the most remarkable tales of human survival. Believe it or not.
This sci-fi.
The spider, a creature that our fear has magnified to gigantic proportions. A gruesome vision of horror, exploited by Hollywood in such films as Tarantula. Into my parlor, said the spider to the fly. Well, right now I feel a little bit like that famous but foolish fly. With some trepidation, I've accepted the invitation. And here I am in the spider lab on the Berkeley campus of the University of California. They say spiders are among the most feared of nature's creatures. That I can attest to. They also say they're the most maligned. Well, that remains to be seen. It's the tarantula that has the most ferocious reputation of all. Yet Dr. Lenny Vincent, sometimes known as the Spider-Man of Berkeley, has assured me that very rarely does one get sick from a tarantula bite. Still, I think I know how little Miss Muffet felt.
These spiders have a terrible reputation, but it's totally ill-deserved. As far as I know, I don't know of anyone who's ever gotten sick from a tarantula bite. In fact, I don't know of anybody that's been bitten by one of these. As I say, I've had them for 10 years, and they've never even attempted to bite me. Now, there are some species in South America that do have a poisonous bite. The ones found in northern Mexico and western United States are essentially harmless. You'll probably get a local reaction if you are bitten, but that's about it.
While spiders may be harmless to us, in the insect world they are deadly predators. Each species a killing machine with its own special technique. The jumping spider stalks its prey in broad daylight. Armed with eyesight keener than that of any other spider, it's been compared with the leopard for its ferocity. For the slow or unwary, there can be no escape. Despite its skill as a killer, perhaps the jumping spider's most spectacular ability is the one that earned it its name. If a 6-foot athlete could jump as well as this spider, he would be able to leap 240 feet. When stalking its prey, the fishing spider can remain submerged for as long as an hour. As with all fishermen in search of a catch, perhaps the most valuable attribute is patience. While some spiders rely on the fierce fundamentals of the hunt, others build traps that rival man's for their ingenuity. The trapdoor spider lies in wait beneath a hinged lid it has constructed of silk and dirt. Not just any victim will do. A bulldog ant with a fierce sting is rejected. But other, more appetizing insects are easy prey for this deadly jack-in-the-box. Like a living booby trap, a cousin of the trapdoor spider detects the minute vibrations of an insect's footsteps. But spiders can create as well as kill. As liquid silk leaves the spider's body, it solidifies, carried by the wind. If the strand finds an anchoring place, the spider can begin a web. The threads look fragile, and sometimes they're as thin as 1/1,000,000th of an inch. Yet for its thickness, the spider's thread is stronger than steel wire. Not all spiders build webs, but the engineering skill of those that do comes without practice or learning. It's a marvel of pure instinct. The spider web can be as deadly as it is beautiful. The Dinopus spider spins a fishing net to ensnare its victims. The spider stretches the net taut with its claws and waits for prey to wander within range. The silken net will become the victim's shroud. The spider will suck the juices of its prey, leaving only a husk. The magnificent spider spins out a thread of silk jeweled with sticky globules that will snare a male moth, its only food. But the moth must be lured within range first. The spider swings its line like a lasso and emits a scent designed to attract the male moths. The odor deludes them into thinking they're bound for an encounter with a female of their kind. The moth will be wrapped in silk. Soon the victim's life juices will be drained. Though the spider may bring death and destruction in its own world, it is our priceless ally. The world might succumb to a plague of insects if it were not for this benign monster of the silken web. Greek mythology attributes the spider's incredible spinning skills to human origins. It seems an artful weaver named Arachne challenged the goddess Athena to a weaving contest. Then, stricken with shame at her audacity, Arachne hanged herself. Athena felt sorry for her and brought her back to life, but transformed her into a spider and made her noose into a web. Live, the goddess commanded, but as a lesson to you, you and all your descendants will hang like this for all your lives. This, according to the ancient Greeks, is how spiders were born. But you better not believe it.
After the volcanic destruction of Krakatoa, searchers found nothing left alive but a spider, believe it or not. This is the quiet little town of Echternach in Luxembourg.
Nothing much happens here. The pace of life can best be described as leisurely. It's like this for 364 days a year. But come the first Tuesday after Pentecost and, oh, in one of the world's more bizarre processions, as many as 30,000 people embark on an extraordinary hopping pilgrimage. The dance commemorates Saint Willibrord, who in the 7th century, it is said, saved the people of this town from a plague similar to Saint Vitus' dance. Today, the townspeople hop all the way to the basilica where Saint Willibrord is entombed. This dance has been a journey of celebration. For others, dance can be a journey to spiritual fulfillment. To the dervishes, the mystical followers of Islam in Turkey, dance is the true path to religious ecstasy. The whirling dervishes spin themselves into trances. Instead of dizziness, they achieve rapture. From the flare of their robes to their counterclockwise turns, strict rules govern their dance. To follow them, they believe, is to achieve harmony with the universe. In Java, villagers gather to witness the Sangyang rite, a ritual dance of purification by fire. Samba, a village holy man, enters a deep trance. The villagers believe his dance will help exorcise evil spirits. That the red-hot embers will cleanse the body, purify the soul. Again and again he enters the flames, apparently unscathed. The capacity to withstand suffering can be the ultimate test of faith. In a Javanese mountain village, dancers relive a 15th century tale portraying horsemen who oppose the conversion of their people to Islam. Supposedly, an Islamic magician cast a spell, forcing the riders to believe they were the horses. A rice farmer in a deep trance eats stalks of raw grain, believing himself possessed by a horse's spirit. Then, as the music urges him forward, the same man devours rose petals with a seemingly insatiable appetite. Now he will rip open a coconut with his teeth. Because he is in a trance, he will have no memory of all the acts he has performed today. In Bali, the people of the village of Karambatan perform a symbolic struggle of good against evil. Enter the witch, Rangda, with the power to control the lives of mortals. In a trance, armed men are poised to attack her, but she holds them at bay, toys with them. Rangda's scream signals the men are now in her power. They will do her bidding. She will now order them to turn their daggers on each other. They will have no choice but to obey. For as long as these men are in a trance, even sharp steel blades will not harm them. Beneath this seeming savagery lies a humane purpose: to purge them of the murderous spirit of Rangda within themselves, the destructive hatred that can possess all of us. Rangda
unmasked. The witch who had enchanted them will now become their victim in a mock attack. Cleansed of their evil feelings, the men share a new spirit of cooperation. Twice a year, thousands jam the ancient church of Santa Chiara in Naples to witness an astonishing phenomenon. The ceremony honors Saint Gennarius, the patron saint of Naples, who was beheaded in the year 305. A reliquary has glass vials containing coagulated blood, which the faithful believe came from the saint at the time of his death. The people have come to witness a modern-day miracle, to watch the ancient coagulated blood turn to liquid. The Cardinal of Naples presides over the ceremony. He displays the vials. The blood of the martyr is still congealed. If it does turn to liquid now, it will be seen as an omen of prosperity for the city. For almost an hour they pray, all minds focusing on the tiny, inert relic within the glass casing. Once again, the cardinal checks the reliquary. The blood has liquefied. Their prayers have been answered. The cardinal presents the reliquary to the congregation. The blood, which only an hour ago was dry and congealed, is now a flowing liquid. To those who fervently kiss the reliquary, to all who believe in the miracle, this is more than just an assurance of good fortune for the city in the year to come. It holds a promise that, as with the saint, miracles of renewal may be possible in their lives as well. Believe it or not. As part of their Mountain Way ceremony, Navajo Indians swallow their arrows, believe it or not.
Pardon me.
Shakespeare wrote, "Of cloud-capped towers and gorgeous palaces, such stuff as dreams are made of." He might well have been anticipating the fantastic architectural creations of Ludwig II, called the Mad King of Bavaria. Since the time of the pharaohs, monarchs have tried to erect monuments that would outlast them. But the eccentric Ludwig built his palaces solely to escape from the harshness of the real world and to give substance to his most romantic dreams. This fairy tale castle, to some, was an extravagant expression of a demented mind. To King Ludwig, however, it reflected the epic romanticism of his childhood hero, composer Richard Wagner.
Long before these palaces were built, or perhaps even conceived, Ludwig had succumbed to the spell of Wagnerian grandeur. Before he was 13 years old, he had committed to memory much of Wagner's early operas, Lohengrin, Tannhäuser.
For the young prince, Wagner in performance was an overwhelming experience. Soon, Ludwig would learn that Wagner was hopelessly in debt and in need of a royal patron. After his coronation in 1864, Ludwig summoned Wagner to a private audience. Filled with emotion, Ludwig later wrote, "I stooped down to him and took him to my heart with the feeling that I was pledging myself to be true to him to the end of time." Wagner's radical politics and amoral lifestyle, however, proved unacceptable in Bavaria. And ultimately, with deep regret, the king was forced to end their relationship. Deprived of Wagner's companionship, Ludwig filled the void by setting into motion a construction scheme of grandiose proportions. He was not yet 24 years old, but he had already conceived the plans for some of the most spectacular architecture Bavaria had ever seen. Neuschwanstein, sometimes called the Sleeping Beauty Palace. Its throne room is opulent and richly decorated with intricate mosaics. It is almost oriental in its sensual appeal, yet somehow forbidding.
The design for this palace at Herrenchiemsee is based on the palace of Louis XIV at Versailles. It began as a stage setting. As an enthusiastic patron of theatrical extravaganzas, King Ludwig sometimes commissioned plays just to see the sets, and sometimes he had sets built with no play to fit them at all. Here in a hall of mirrors that is a virtual duplicate of Versailles, Ludwig paid homage to the French monarch, Louis XIV. Why would he build such a monument to a French king? Well, he believed he was related to the long line of Bourbons. It was a tenuous relationship at best, but sufficient for Ludwig to convince himself that the French kings were his guests here. One of his servants vividly remembered that during the final years of his reign, Ludwig would carry on imaginary conversations with Louis XIV and famous members of his court.
This is Linderhof, the third of Ludwig's magic castles. An apparently subterranean cave constructed at Ludwig's command grew out of his quest for a world over which he had complete control.
Illusion first fascinated and then came to govern the builder of these fanciful, some say insane creations. Ludwig loved the theater, play of the real against the imaginary, the artificial transformed into spectacular reality. Inspired by the Blue Grotto at the Isle of Capri in Italy, this room is a marvel of stagecraft.
This artificial lake was, in Ludwig's time, revolutionary. One of the first electrical power stations in Bavaria was built just to provide the lighting effects. Fantasies like this, however, could not disguise political reality. Ludwig's extravagance had spawned opposition to his reign, which he tried desperately to ignore.
King Ludwig dined on the best of royal fare. But he refused to allow his servants to serve him, except in a most indirect and ingenious manner. Dinner is served.
By the early 1880s, Ludwig's fantasies rule his life. He spent sleepless, haunted nights roaming his castle's corridors. He knew they were calling him mad. He had spent 31 million marks, nearly $75 million today, to build his grandiose castles and had all but ignored the war between Bavaria and Prussia. His ministers were already advocating his removal from the throne, by constitutional means if possible, by other means if necessary. For them, it would be easy to gather credible evidence to prove that he was insane. Perhaps the best course for him was to leave the matter in the hands of God. The charges against him were insolvency and insanity. Depressed, even suicidal, Ludwig awaited his fate. In the dead of night on June 9th, 1886, Ludwig's fears became fact. His government had turned against him. He was trapped between those who had betrayed him and the doctors who had certified him insane. Dr. Bernhard von Guden's diagnosis, however, had been reached before he had ever met the patient. Based on that questionable medical testimony, the king was taken into custody. Near Lake Starnberg, a few miles from von Guden's asylum, Ludwig became a prisoner in the doctor's care. Under the Constitution, Ludwig could be removed from office only if, for whatever reason, he did not perform his royal duties for 1 full year. Dr. von Guden could make sure that treatment would last that long. Yet there were some, perhaps, who feared Ludwig might somehow still reclaim his throne. If so, their fears were laid to rest on the evening of June 13th, 1886. For on that day, the reign of Ludwig II came to a sudden end.
The two men were never seen again, alive. This cross marks the spot where their bodies were found under, to say the least, mysterious circumstances. The story offered by the authorities stated that King Ludwig had committed suicide and that the doctor had drowned trying to save him. However, bruises found on the doctor's neck suggested other possibilities. One, that the king tried to escape, the doctor struggled with him, and they both drowned. Or that the king tried to kill the doctor, and they both died. Or even that the doctor, according to plan, tried to murder Ludwig, and the king carried the doctor with him to death beneath the waters. No one will ever know what happened here almost 100 years ago. And that is as it should be. Because Ludwig loved mystery, illusion, the tricks that transform shadow into haunting reality. Ludwig was called mad because of his extravagant obsessions. But was he? Without King Ludwig's so-called madness, the grandeur of his palaces would not exist, and the world would be a poorer place without them. Believe it or not.
Gian Gastone, the laziest ruler in history, governed Florence, Italy for 8 years from his bed. Believe it or not.
We're the Scrum.
There are many kinds of weddings, some more spectacular than others, but there are two ingredients most share in common: a willing bride and groom.
Every time I hear that dear old wedding march, I feel rather glad I have a broken arch. I have heard a lot of married people talk, and I know that marriage is a long, long walk. To most people, weddings mean romance, but I prefer a picnic or a dance. Another bride, another groom, another sunny honeymoon, another season, another reason for making whoopee. The choir sings, here comes the bride, another victim is by her side. He's lost his reason, 'cause it's the season for making whoopee.
They say a good man is hard to find, but belief in the redeeming powers of a good woman is an old, old story. In England at one time, a condemned criminal could be saved from death if a woman offered to marry him under the gallows. However, on occasion, the offer was refused, the condemned man preferring death to marriage, believe it or not. All in all, the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana was a pretty conventional ceremony. But sometimes a girl may feel like something, well, a little more out of the ordinary.
Another bride, another groom, another sunny honeymoon, another season, another reason for making whoopee. The choir sings, here comes the bride, another victim is by her side. He's lost his reason, 'cause it's the season for making whoopee.
How out of the ordinary can a wedding get?
Down through the countless ages, you'll find it everywhere. Somebody makes good wages, somebody wants her share. She calls him Toodles and rolls her eyes. She makes him strudels and bakes him pies. What is it all for? It's so he'll fall for.
In this cockeyed wedding, Ben Turpin does the honors for Oliver Hardy. Stan Laurel is best man.
Now, you take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife?
Who, me?
Not you. He means me.
Well, he's looking at me.
I do. You take this man to be your lawful wedded husband?
I do.
I now pronounce you man and wife. Congratulations, my boy. You married the sweetest little girl in all the world. With your permission, I'll kiss the bride.
And so, Laurel and Hardy were married.
Friends, we are here this morning to share with Ralph and Ann a most important moment in their lives.
In this real wedding, the judge is the father of the bride.
With this ring, I thee wed. Now, with the good wishes of all your friends.
In our culture, the father gives the bride away. But in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, every bride has her own price. Two families of the Mendi tribe assemble to haggle over how much the groom's family must pay for the bride. The deal is consummated. Now payment must be made. The teenage bride will accept it herself, made in the form of crescents, cut from gold-lipped pearl shells, each worth about $30. The bride can decide who in her clan will receive the shells and who will be slighted, the only time in a Mendi woman's life when she'll have control over valuable property. The bride must now leave her family. Although they seem satisfied with their profit, it will be some time before she knows whether she'll be satisfied with her new husband. She has been bought, but only partially paid for, and she will not be able to consummate her marriage until all the remaining payments have been made. Until then, 3 long months from now, she must live with her mother-in-law. The eternal pursuit of man after woman is the world's oldest sport. For at least 500 years, the nomadic Turkic peoples of Central Asia have ritualized that pursuit in an unusual horse race. To prove his passion, the suitor must gallop after his sweetheart and steal a kiss. Then, the bride-to-be lashes out with her riding crop in reply. In ancient times, these blows would sometimes disfigure the groom on his wedding day. Today, the blows are symbolic. A reminder, perhaps, that marriage often mixes the bitter with the sweet. Some marriages marriages require the spark of true love, but in the traditional Korean arranged marriage, no one waits for lightning to strike. This young man will take no part in the selection of his prospective bride, who must undergo an interview with the women of his family. Out of belief, perhaps, that anything as eternal as marriage ought not to be based on a mere whim of the heart, the decision will be made by the cooler heads of the elders. After the interview, the groom's family sends the bride's family information needed to draw the couple's horoscope, including their dates and times of birth. Ritual dictates the paper be folded in 5 and put into an envelope, which must then be wrapped in a red cloth before it can be delivered. The bride's family quickly responds. They have studied the horoscopes and decided this is a match which is truly made in heaven. The wrapping of the message, a red and blue cloth, reveals the verdict. The marriage shall take place. The wedding day. Dressed in traditional finery, the groom rides to the bride's home. The bride's preparations are completed with adornments expressing joy, an emotion she is now forbidden from showing herself. The groom is led to the courtyard of the bride's home, where, before a gathering of both families, he will await his bride. He presents the bride's family with a symbol of everlasting love, a wild goose made of wood. Enter the bride in the arms of her father. Bride and groom have still not spoken one word to each other. No vows will be exchanged. The couple will be wed simply by sharing a cup of rice wine. Two strangers have been united, and not until evening will they be left alone. Even then, in an ancient ritual, through peepholes, female relatives of the bride will watch the newlyweds. In accordance with the ritual of the wedding night, the bride must sit perfectly still and wait for the groom to disrobe her. If he did not do so, tradition dictates she would have had to sit in this position, silent and awake, all night. In the end, what matters is not the wedding ritual, but the bond between man and woman that the wedding represents, even in this marriage of strangers.
The most grueling Olympic event is the 26 miles and 385 yards of the marathon. That's the official distance now. But up to 1908, the marathon varied, with the average distance about 25 miles. So, what's 1 more mile when you've run that far? A lot to a runner named Dorando Petri. In 1908, Britain, for the first time in its history, hosted the majestic Olympic Games. In honor of the occasion, the Princess of Wales officiated at the start of the marathon, so that the royal grandchildren, the future King George VI and King Edward VIII, could have a fine view of the event. The start line was placed on the lawn in front of Windsor Castle. The royal accommodation added more than a mile to the race and probably cost Dorando Petri from Italy the gold medal. Petri, leading the race, but at the end of his endurance, collapsed several hundred yards from the finish line. The American Johnny Hayes, running second, won the gold medal. That extra mile has been part of every Olympic marathon since, so the next time you see the pain-filled faces of runners as they struggle over that last long mile, remember that it's there so that a fine view could be had by 2 boys, 13 and 14 years old, both future kings of England. Believe it or not.
An asteroid populated by miniature mutants, hideous dog-faced monsters led by a gigantic leader. Now a stranded astronaut is trapped in the terror. Phantom Planet as Phantomania begins tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Now stay tuned for Dark Shadows next on the Sci-Fi Channel.